In such people's eyes, wealth is a most important influence, one that expresses superiority. They feel and demonstrate great respect for the well-off. This devotion to possessions is described as the worldly appetites in the Quran. To humanity, the love of worldly appetites is painted in glowing colors, women and children, and heaped upon mounds of gold and silver, and horses with fine markings, and livestock and fertile farmland. All that is merely the enjoyment of the life of this world. The best homecoming is in the presence of God. Yet such concern over possessions and wealth also brings with it terrible apprehensions. Heading the list of these is the fear of losing what one has. The fact is that a person can lose everything he owns in an earthquake, in a single moment. Or the home he saved up for over so many years may become uninhabitable as the result of a fire. All these are tests from God. Someone who lives unaware that the life of this world is a place of testing, and that he is being tested by means of such events, will be stunned when he suddenly loses his possessions, and may even display a rebellious nature. Since people who live far removed from religious moral values look at the loss of possessions from this distorted perspective, they imagine that there is nothing good or auspicious in such an event. God reveals in the Quran that He will test people by reducing their possessions. We will test you with a certain amount of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and life and fruits. But give good news to the steadfast. Things are totally different for believers, however. First and foremost, attitudes peculiar to the society of the ignorant, such as a thirst to own or accumulate possessions, are totally absent from believers' superior moral values, because the believer has devoted his entire life to earning the approval of God. He therefore uses his possessions in the path of God, and never becomes caught up in the selfish passions of earthly desires. Believers never alter their behavior in the event they lose their possessions in some way, because they know that there is great wisdom and auspiciousness behind that, even if they do not know what these are at the time. Perhaps God is issuing a reminder by this means to His servants who have become caught up in the transient desires of this world. Or He may have determined an auspicious future of which they are unaware by bestowing an even finer recompense in this world and the next on those of His servants who display patience at such a difficult time. Therefore, believers regard everything that happens to them as a reminder, seek forgiveness, and submit unconditionally to the destiny created by God. Say, nothing can happen to us except what God has ordained for us. He is our Master. It is in God that the believers should put their trust. An illness or accident can totally change our lives. Let us consider what happens to someone who catches a severe disease. A person who catches such an illness will have to alter his entire way of life. Someone who was full of energy and worked both day and night until that point may now have to spend most of his time at home, in a shuttered and antiseptic environment, or in total peace and quiet. He may not be able to eat what he wants anymore. In contrast to healthy people, this individual may suffer pains, nausea, and fatigue. He may suffer a loss of strength and energy. Yet, contrary to what some people imagine, this is not a negative situation. On the contrary, it is a great mercy on the person concerned. A very different picture emerges when we consider in depth the beauties that lie hidden behind sickness. Sickness reminds a person that he is helpless and in need of God. A human body that is full of health, at the moment of sickness, falls victim to viruses or germs too small to be seen with the naked eye. A single germ can put an end to all of a person's activities and make him unable to read, speak, walk, or breathe. All this may cause a person to reconsider his devotion to the life of this world. At such moments, a thinking person will better understand his helplessness and how much he stands in need of God. Thus, someone who was arrogant and proud of his possessions when he was healthy may now become aware of this truth, which he had never properly considered before. He will better appreciate the infinite might of our Lord, the Creator of all. In sickness, a person prays more and draws closer to God. Someone who catches a severe disease will begin to reflect more on death and the hereafter. He will begin to think about death and the hereafter even more as the disease progresses. He will pray to God more frequently and more sincerely to be cured of the remorseless disease from which he suffers. His closeness to God may therefore increase. Of course, this individual must avoid ingratitude and must continue to pray with the same sincerity after being restored to health. He will thus continue to lead an auspicious, in other words, a godly life, by means of the disease he caught. God refers to those who are ungrateful after having turned to him in moments of difficulty in the Quran thus: "When harm touches man, he calls on us, lying on his side, or sitting down, or standing up. Then, when we remove the harm from him, he carries on as if he had never called on us when the harm first touched him. In that way, we make what they have done appear good to the profligate." Through sickness, one can better understand that being healthy is a blessing from God. Some people who never suffer from illness for a long time